I don't eat genetically engineered foods. I don't like to put unnatural things in my body. It's mRNA. If you get angry at someone, it's truly just you projecting your own shadow onto them.
I literally hate people who aren't oppressed.
The most important thing is to let your higher self guide you.
Why wouldn't you follow the mandates?
I always treat people with an attitude of loving kindness because you never know what people are going through. It's tofu.
He deserves to be canceled. If we work together, we can get him fired and ruin his entire life.
Yeah. And as a collective, we need to better honor and protect the sacred feminine.
In MMA, of course women should have to fight biological males.
It's scary how accurate that is, and they literally changed the hippies from do whatever you want to don't ever leave your dwelling. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Luke Rudowski here of WeAreChange.org. And oh boy, do we have a lot of crazy nonsense to get into today, as of course we have meetings of many heads of states coming together right now, literally envisioning and planning the next severe lockdowns and restrictions on your everyday life. How will that look like? Well, we're going to be talking about that, plus a lot more, all on this independent media organization. But before we do, the clip that we played in the beginning of this broadcast is, of course, a small segment from Awaken with JP, who is, I would say, a national treasure. If you want to watch the full video, we linked his YouTube video down below in our description, so you could definitely watch more of his content. And seriously, absolutely brilliant. He hit the nail on the head with this one. Documenting the complete delusion of our mainline society that is becoming the exact opposite of what they promised to be. And one perfect representation of this is this now deleted tweet by a SJW race hustler that has been verified on Twitter that just exposed their own con as they highlighted how white privilege doesn't really exist, where according to The Hill, more than a third of white students had to lie about their race on college applications in order to get into universities, in order to be accepted into them. Another perfect example of this critical race theory is yet again another bombshell in a Loudoun County school that has one mother saying that her 6-year-old daughter was taught that she was born evil because she was born white, which was told to her by her teacher during a history lesson. It's also important to note that a Loudoun County school has been in the news lately after it covered up an extremely horrible incident with a female student that we cannot even mention or talk about on this YouTube channel. But I think it's fair to say that the school board prioritized woke ideology over, of course, the severe safety and well-being of their students. In related, that makes absolutely no sense at all news, we have Barack Obama recently publicly honoring a self-proclaimed previous crack dealer that had multiple serious allegations against him by many women, who in his own music videos depicted them in the most unglorious ways that I can't even mention here on this YouTube channel, because this video would get taken down if I would say what Jay-Z said in his music videos, while of course he also glorified trivial materialistic corporatism. This was the person that the President of the United States, Barack Obama, honored publicly as, quote, the embodiment of the American dream. I kid you not. Whoever would have thought you do all of those horrible illegal things, and as long as you just donate to the right causes, all of that is magically cleared. And of course, forgotten. Well, we didn't forget, and we hope you don't either. In related, very powerful people who hurt children and other innocent women news, we of course have yet another Epstein-connected lackey, this time Barclays CEO Jess Stanley, that has resigned over ties to, of course, an international trafficker of small children to wealthy billionaire elites. An operation that has been ongoing for over 30 plus years, many people still not held accountable. A resignation is the least amount of accountability that should be had here, and truly, What is happening is an absolute huge travesty of injustice. But remember, the people who were talking about it when the mainstream media was still praising this man and his operation, saying that he was a great person, while independent media like the channel like you're watching right now were criticizing it, we were also called conspiracy theorists. We were demonetized, we were downranked, we were demoted, and we were called crazy conspiracy theorists. And all of this is happening as what you could say online is being constrained even more by the day by, of course, big governments and big tech monopolies, as we're finding out today that the UK government is proposing a new, quote, online safety bill that would jail people for 2 years if they, quote, expressed false information surrounding a very invasive medical procedure. And the war on free speech continues, as even a CNN analyst recently compared a pilot saying, "Let's go Brandon," to a declaration of radical Islamists that are hell-bent on destroying the West. And as free speech gets sequestered and restrained almost every single day, at least we have our very own platform where we get to say and do whatever we want, like an actual true hippie, in the most truest and realist way on LukeUncensored.com. If you haven't signed up yet, what are you waiting for? We have exclusive merchandise, exclusive offers, exclusive events, and of course, almost daily content with information that is directed towards helping you with the information that is most suppressed from the general public. Some people have compared this to our own little cult, our own little secret society. I like to call it the opposite of a secret society, and something that is necessary in a day and age where speech and solutions are being attacked more than ever. LukeUncensored.com is the website. It's a lot of fun. If you haven't signed up yet, click the link down below and find out more information about it right now. Now, if you remember, not so long ago, a few years ago, before this sickness, madness took over the world, there was a lot of very prominent people calling for very similar policies that have been implemented because of this sickness. They have been calling for people to be regulated on how much they could fly, where they could go, how much red meat could they consume, how many restaurants could they go to, how many miles could they drive their car. There was actual serious discussions about implementing similar restrictions, lockdowns, even before a sickness gripped the world, all in the name of course, helping the environment. Very interestingly, a lot of the main people calling for these kind of restrictions and controls to help the environment were actually the ones hurting the environment the most, but that's another story. But today, we're living in a day and age where even prominent leftist media figure Bill Maher has just publicly announced that this sickness is, quote, over, and that people shouldn't even have to wear masks because of natural immunity, because of people taking procedures against the sickness, openly declaring that people should just start resuming living their lives, and that these lockdowns, restrictions, mandates, and protocols are, quote, over. But a lot of very powerful people meeting in Europe right now have another message saying, wait, not so long there. As of course, Prince Charles, the son of the Queen, the brother of a man who says he has no sweat glands, just announced during the globalist confab of COPA 26 that the world needs a, quote, vast military-style campaign to, quote, marshal the strength of the global private sector in their fight against carbon in order to, quote, marshal a fundamental economic transition. Very interestingly, that also a lot of many powerful politicians and corporatists have been calling about for their own economic transition, which they have deemed the Great Reset, which of course many politicians have repeated successfully all around the world its praises and calls for. This is also the same language that the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom used to invoke against their fight against their sickness. Canadian officials, UK, American officials, Australian officials, of course, also made very similar epithets. Now, this call for the forced militarization transition of our economy, all to fight carbon, just also comes at the heels of many meetings that Prince Charles had with, of course, billionaire Jeff Bezos, and before that, meetings with, of course, billionaire Bill Gates, who, of course, flew on their private jets in order to have a cup of tea with Prince Charles before this very strange and aggressive announcement by the prince, who soon will become head of the monarchy in the royal family. Now, there's nothing, of course, like billionaires with mansions and private yachts lecturing me about how the plebs use too much carbon. But it's important to note here that a lot of the language that we're seeing at COP26 is not just language, but proposals to mainly continue a lot of the sickness regulations in order to fight carbon. Now, before expanding on that particular topic, it's also important to know that Prince Charles, the man who's literally calling for a military-style restructuring of our economy, somewhat of a great reset in order to fight carbon, also has been accused of being a eugenicist, a person who has openly called for population control, population reduction, as he has previously called for the world's population to be reduced by 3/4. He publicly shares his concerns about, quote, overcrowding reaching plague proportions. This is specific language that he used in 2019, warning the world that if we don't reduce the population right now, there's going to be sicknesses that spread throughout the world, while his own father, Prince Philip, literally declared publicly that he wanted to solve the population explosion problem in this country by wanting to be, quote, reincarnated as a particularly deadly virus. This is not my words here. This is literally the words of Prince Philip, who extensively called for the number of people on this world to be heavily reduced. Now, I can't even get into debating carbon, and I won't be doing that here on this YouTube channel, since, of course, YouTube announced policies that such debates are no longer permitted on their platform. Twitter also just announced that they're going to begin pre-bunk and go after any disinformation when it comes to the debate around carbon. But again, this is why we have LukeUncensored.com, where we could discuss these issues openly. But I think it's fair to say, when these powerful people talk about carbon needing to be eliminated, that carbon that they're describing, I think it's fair to assess what they're actually meaning when they're saying this. With these debates, it's also important to point out that no science is immune to the influence of politics and the corruption of government, as said by Jacob Bernowski. But what you're seeing at these COPA 26 meetings is nothing new, as of course the mainstream media is taking their press releases and regurgitating them, as the foundation for these ideas has already been set, especially within the mainstream media, with articles like this from the BBC talking about how the global sickness has actually helped carbon to go down. NASA released articles talking about how lockdowns brought, quote, a fast global ozone reduction. Forbes openly wrote an article talking about how the world needs the equivalent of a sickness lockdown every 2 years in order to meet the carbon emission goals of many of these politicians. Even the Secretary General of the WMO said that this sickness is not a solution for carbon, but, quote, however, it does provide us with a platform for more sustained and ambitious climate action to reduce emissions to net zero through a complete transformation of our industrial, energy, and transportation systems, aka the Great Reset, the domestic passport systems, mandatory hoops of compliance to jump through in order to gain special privileges that were previously rights in our society, while of course destroying any small, middle class, or competition to the big billionaires that essentially call the shots here as they fly around in their private jets, in their yachts and mansions, telling us that we're living beyond our means. Also, there's another very strange connection here with a lot of these organizations, a lot of these groups connected to sinister individuals that hurt children in unspeakable ways. This was actually pointed out by Elon Musk just recently, that just tweeted in response to people criticizing him this article by the Express in the United Kingdom that talked about absolutely horrible behaviors by the United Nations. The royal family that's calling for this military-style campaign to change the fundamental economic structure of our current society also has very long and extensive ties to people who hurt children. Not only this man's brother, who's being accused of very serious allegations, but there's Edward Heath, Jimmy Savile, and a long list of dangerous, disgusting characters that have flaunted their wealth and power and have gotten away with inhumane actions. So spare me your lectures, spare me the disinformation, spare me the propaganda. Let's call a spade here. This is the Great Reset. This is what they planned for. This is what they're calling for. And they're openly doing it in front of your face to the point where a lot of people aren't even realizing it, which is ridiculous. And that's why sharing this video is more important than ever. And because you guys do that, I'm still able to be here. It's one of the main things keeping us going. If you like this video, click the like button. If you disliked it, dislike the video. I appreciate your constructive criticism. I appreciate your voice. I appreciate your time. It means the world to me to have this opportunity to speak to you. I hope to see you later on today for a new video that I'm going to be shooting right now for LukeUncensored.com. I love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org.